Okay, well, everybody, thank you for being here and welcome to this reading of winners and honorable mentions of the New England Poetry Club 2023 contests. I'm David Miller. I'm on the board of the New England Poetry Club. I'm a co-chair of programming. And with me here, Hillary Salick, who is the Zoom tech, without whom, you know, disaster looms. Always need a Zoom tech, you really do, and an experienced one too. I will do a little bit more discussion of what's going to happen in a bit, but Hillary, do you want to talk about ground rules and requests, housekeeping?
I think just as I said before, that just keep ourselves muted and that we cannot unmute you. So hopefully everybody knows how to unmute themselves when they need to, if you get muted by one of us. Okay. Yeah. Looking forward to the reading.
Great. Thanks, Hillary. Yeah, we prefer not to, you know, autocratically mute people without their permission because it's complex, but hopefully that'll never need to happen during this period of time. So anyway, we're all looking forward to a lot of great work. There's been a lot of build up to this and excitement around it. I'll talk about the order. I'll introduce the particular prizes or contests as they come up, but I'll say in general that what we'll do for most of the reading is alternate longer and with shorter single poems. There are single poem contests, and then there are book and chapbook contests. So for the first, you know, most of it, we'll alternate the Samuel Washington Allen Prize poems, which are longer poems, with other single poem prizes, the shorter ones, just for reasons of pacing. And then we'll conclude with poetry reading selections from the chapbook and full-length book contests. A couple of other little things. There is, as many of you know, and maybe everyone knows this, we publish an online anthology that is now in process of being put together. It's still in progress. It will include the poets' bios, of course, which I won't read here for reasons of time. I don't have those and I won't read them. I'll just introduce the poets. When the anthology is done, we'll announce it on the website, our newsletter, we'll announce it on social media, and I also will let all the reading poets here know so you all can publicize it, you know, in your own networks. So let's get started. And we'll start with one of the selections of the Samuel Washington Allen's Prize. This is for a long poem or poem sequence. This prize honors the legacy of the African-American poet, translator, professor, and former New England Poetry Club leader, Samuel Washington Allen, who also published as Paul Vesey. And this prize was selected by Danielle Legros-George. We'll begin with Vivian Shipley reading her honorable mention poem. Vivian.
Thank you, David. These poems are from a sequence of poems with the overall title, I Grow Old, I Grow Old, which is a quote from the love song of J.F.R. Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. Unfortunately, these poems are based on personal experience. So the first poem is entitled, Upon Turning 80. This day matters to me, but it does not to the checkout girl when I can't stop myself from telling her it's my birthday. At the end of his life, Beethoven devoted days, weeks, working 33 variations of an almost tuneless and insignificant 32-bar waltz written by Anton Diabelli, a composer of no great distinction. Turning 80, I think I may know why. Over and over, straining for music to seep first into his head, then his fingers, Beethoven leaned on piano keys, as I do on memory, using a printer ink, trying to cobble together notes from hours of reading, but little writing. No, Emerald, cooking never interested me, even making my grandmother's jam cake for my birthday. But I'd like to compare myself to yeast and dough, edging over the rim of a bowl. Pushed down, I may rise again, become all I'd hoped to be. I knew I'd never be a Beethoven, but I would settle for being minor, like the Russian composer Alexander Bordarin. Not quite resting on the guillotine of old age, but unable to muscle my carry-on to a plane's overhead bin. I should watch the moon sliver, court dawn when rain has injected root smell into air, not grave dig into sleep. If a loofah could scrape years, I'd have a birthday massage, kneaded and reamed like a lemon. Maybe I'd even pay for an extra foam. My life is unwound, crisscrossing like a ball of yarn, finally rolled to me in rehab. I have no pattern, way to untangle, take control. What would Beethoven have said of his life, of his final obsession with Diabelli? Each variation composed in one key, he transposed it to another, but always with a refrain that was repeated, as if trapped like a plant hopper, wings spread, trying to fly first from resin, only to be entombed in amber. Encased in a past he tried to rewrite, did Beethoven find his way out of the commonplace of every waltzing couple, transcend his reality to create a new context? Simmering gumbo. Cooking down roux to show I can change, I substitute butter for my grandma's lard from hogs Grandpa slaughtered in late November on the full moon. Knowing while the moon waned, meat would shrink with too much fat. I also try repeating retirement until it leaves me indifferent, but acceptance is not the same as peace. Spinning around as if I'm a revolving door, I wonder if circular movement means I'm a hamster on a wheel. In Thai culture, 9 is the number of renewal, of letting go. To begin again, have ill luck washed off me, let good fortune in, let 9 of anything living go. The key word here is living. I doubt using celery, onions, bell peppers on the cusp of going bad counts. What can I offer? Like mixing up gumbo in a pot, I try to quilt my days piecemeal. Be grateful for what the world gives me, not what has been taken away. If I can last until late September, when monarchs migrate, one might land on me if I spread my arms, seeking a sign of hope, of change. If black and orange wings flutter, can I wait long enough for one to light? Staying motionless like a blue heron, neck extended, standing in the cove on one leg to spear a fish. Through the looking glass. It's a quote from Lewis Carroll, Prologue, 1871. Echoes live in memory yet, though envious years would say, forget. Draped in aqua blue, all imagination and touch. Pierre Auguste Renoir's young woman arranging her earring is uninterested in what a mirror might tell her. There's none in the painting, maybe none in the room. She's either putting the earring off, her eyes closed as if anticipating a kiss, or aligning it with the pink rose tucked behind her ear. My eyes open, I avoid mirrors. Don't want to know how I look. I can't stop myself when passing sun-blackened windows. Ignoring my reflection is like burying wreckage of a rowboat in sand. In order to imagine life it must have led, the fish it held while seaworthy. Memory, like water, forever tries to get back to where it was. The Mississippi River was straightened to make room for houses, but it still floods them. Renoir's woman, sure of her beauty, youth, didn't think about them, didn't try to reach into the past, hoping its glory will emerge before surrendering to darkness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Thanks for starting us off that way. Very grateful to you. We'll now go to the poems in the Diana der Hovhanessian Prize. This is for a translation from any language. This long-standing prize is named in honor of poet and translator Diana der Hovhanessian, who led the New England Poetry Club with vision and energy for decades. This prize was selected by Jay Cates, who's here with us. We will first hear from Winton Lin and Paula Lambert. Paula has translated a poem which she'll introduce. And we'll begin in each case with the poem in the original language. So Paula, why don't you introduce yourself and Winton then, please? However, Paula, you are on, there you
go. I'm Paula J. Lambert. I live in Columbus, Ohio, as does Winton. But today I'm reading from Shirley, Massachusetts, my mother's house, and Winton is actually reading from Connecticut. We're going to read a poem called Pear, P-E-A-R, like the fruit. And one thing to keep in mind is that the word pear in the original Chinese is kind of a homonym for the word for death, and it is a pandemic poem. So we'll let Winton.
Okay. All right. So I'm reading the original in Chinese. The poem title is 离。这些年，长者甚至同龄人相继离去。听闻时，你在削一枝梨，梨有梨的苦，也有梨的甘润。梨形的，他人病榻，你坐下时，那起皱的、受惊的白色床单，物体皆是庞大松软的梨。人们坐在房间里吃梨，最合适只是含着梨核，吞吞吐吐，忏悔，吐露。3颗黑贝雷，一段梨树枝，思路折返，去日无多。爱或恨，削梨之夜，你我长曾呼吸，何等清晰。That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We should mention the poet's name too.
Yeah, the original poet's name is Wang Feng. Her pen name is Duan Qingqing, and she is a well-known published poet in China and some Asian nations, including Hong Kong and Singapore. So, but she is very new to the American scene.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Sure.
Pear. These days, the elders, even peers my own age, are leaving, one after the other. You were peeling a pear when I heard the news, paring bitter skin away from the sweet fruit, paring everything, the sick bed, the wrinkled, frightened white sheet you sat down on. Everything had become huge, soft pear. People sitting in the room were eating pears, held seeds like words on their tongues, hesitated, spat them out. 3 black buds, a withered pear tree branch. The thought, our days are numbered. The realization, love it or hate it, this pear-peeling night, you and I can still breathe.
Thank you, Paula and Wintong. Thank you very much. I neglected to say that was the first of 2 honorable mention poems for the Derhovnessian Prize. The next honorable mention poem will be read by, Dzvinia, is Ali here? She's not here.
I've tried texting her. I'm not getting a response, so
Okay.
it'll just be me.
Well, please go ahead then and introduce your poem.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm Dzvinia Orlowsky, and I'm reading from Marshfield, Massachusetts. And my co-translator, Ali Kinsella, who's Chicago-based, we just exchanged recently a see you at the reading. So I hope she's okay. Unfortunately, she was going to read the Ukrainian, so I just have the English, so I will go ahead and read that. I'm going to be reading a poem by the Lviv-based award-winning writer, translator, literary critic, educator, Helena Kruk, who Ali and I are very happy to be publishing with Lost Source Press, a collection of her poems, Lost in Living, next, actually this coming spring. The poem I'm going to read, it just goes right into the first line. So Helena Kruk. In a small provincial Chinese town of only 2 to 4 million, where shopkeepers can't understand what I need, even with hand gestures, I feel like a rope knotted at one end, as alone as I always wanted to be, surrounded by people like me, with no excess desire to explain myself, to understand everyone, or to be understood. It's enough to be myself and to watch how morning gains momentum, untwisting in the air, how local butchers saw carcasses in building passageways, how the shop assistant across the way singes pig trotters, how local housewives join in lively conversation over the shiitakes spread out in a row directly on the sidewalk. They're probably talking about me, glancing over again and again. I'm glad I don't understand them. Sometimes we need not to understand, to start over from the beginning, from the most general concepts, from common roots, from one's own body. I can only speak the language of the children who at the intersection have surrounded me, cautiously touching, running away, showing me the direction of my hotel, asking how I like it, who I am, where I'm from, how they live here. Oh, how I understand them. The language of children is the same everywhere. Cheerful, ringing, mouths hanging wide open, an inquisitive finger pointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dzvinia. And then this year's winner of the Derhovnessian Prize will be introduced by the translator of the prize, Mara Fay Lethem, coming in to us from Spain. So Mara, please.
Hello. I'll be reading first in the original Catalan, and then in my translation, a poem by a poet named Enric Casasas, who is a poet whose work is both erudite and whimsical and draws from a wide range of influences, including medieval poetry and free verse. He often recites his work aloud, sometimes with musical accompaniment, and he's published more than 25 volumes and won some of the most important awards here in Catalonia. He's quite daunting to translate, but I've chosen to start with some of the easier poems, and I'm working my way up. And this one is called Animal, Anima, L'Animal. Del bulliment de ideas y de malas ideas y mitges ideas, conceptes, esbossos, guidi, consciències, intencions, males consciències, raus estranys, remolins de propòsits i de pressentiments i del preocupar-se i del preveure, remolins arremolinats de mots i travessats de paraules i de frases fetes entre la pressa d'ara, d'aquest matí, i la dels anys, la del que esperes, potser del viure i els batecs dels cors dels amics, pares, germans, amors, i el camp de mines de les males llengües de les oficines, i el de l'enemic de dins, i la picor animal de la pell, quan se me'n mengen els polls i em grato amb les potes de davant. Animatum anima manimal. From the bubbling of ideas and bad ideas and half ideas, concepts, sketches, I mean consciences, intentions, bad consciences, strange pangs, whirlwinds of propositions and of premonitions and preoccupations and predictions, whirls of whirlwinds of words and tangles of terms and adages between the bustle of the now, this morning, and of the years of what you expect, perhaps, from the living and the beating of the hearts of friends, parents, siblings, lovers, and the minefield of wagging tongues in offices and in the enemy inside, an animal itching on my skin when the lice devour me and I scratch at them with my forepaws. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mara. Thank you for introducing us to Enrique Casases. We will now turn to the second honorable mention selection for the Samuel Washington Allen Prize. This is Joyce Wilson, please.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, everyone. I will read some of the poems from my sequence, The Octagonal Schoolhouse. These poems question my memories of and education about the African-American community where I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania between Philadelphia and Wilmington, Delaware. Lesson on Paradise. Old Testament, the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve as its first inhabitants. From the Iranian, an enclosed garden. New Testament, after death, a Christian place of redemption. Mythology, a state of extreme bliss. Mythology, an inclusive space under divine love. Social mythology, an exclusive place that can be managed to keep others out. He arrived on foot. We did not know about the plantation in Delaware, where those who left would have come all the way by foot, across state lines and into eastern Pennsylvania. How long before he found the church, the preacher who would help him find his way, who came from Wilmington, the couple from Virginia, the blacksmith and his son from Arkansas? And was the land just where they said, and his to buy with savings no one knew about? And did he find the deed and know where to sign? His King James Bible opened, would he sit before he worked and plan what he would grow? And did he trust he'd not be driven out? Where trees were free to spread their limbs as far as they could reach, he'd have to watch for sun. He'd send his children to the public school required by law since 1891, where they would not be taught about the place he came from, the Delaware plantation. The mower. Through the school bus window, 1958. The school bus window framed the scene. I watched the mower glide across the field and down along the fence and recognized the driver at the wheel of his machine, a tractor with its seat high off the ground on tires that were as tall men's shoulders. heard the engine's whir, its steady sound, saw the tooth-edged blade release and drop to comb the bank and make the roadside swath. He rode with ease until the plot was cut. His morning work was done, or so we thought. He'd missed the clump of daisies by the gate. By the schoolhouse gate, 1964. One day he waited by the schoolhouse gate. I could count the layers of his clothing, the overcoat, the heavy overalls, the denim work shirt buttoned to the chin. I saw his smile beneath his fur-trimmed hat. What secret knowledge bound him with that smile? What burned within to fill him up with warmth? Bible verses he had memorized, the season's earnings he had tallied up, things he had saved, discarded window frame, historic sign, a bucket, mended wagon, length of wire, burlap, bits of tin. The man who lived to work and worked nonstop, a proverb of an endless industry, whose forebears used a scythe to cut this plot. For them, perhaps, the daisies left uncut. Lesson on pursuit of happiness. Some suggest that Jefferson was wrong, that he might have translated the Greek arete as excellence, not happiness, the right to pursue that which interests us according to our talents until we become good at what we were born to do and can contribute our newly won skill for the love of it, to the benefit of democracy, which would lead to a deeper fulfillment. Such a pursuit gives coherence to the meaning of life. The baseball player. We'd heard the rumor that decades before, he had once been famous playing ball. And when he came of age, did he observe how farmers pushed the plows in measured rows and how the ball would make a measured arc as he leaned back and balanced on the ground and threw to send a meteor by force of will each time until his brother caught it in midair and set it back to him, where it would smack against his open palm. To marvel at the speed and harmony of form, this back and forth repeat again. To love the fairness in the measured game, the structure and the rules, the cool surprise. To sign up with the Negro Baseball League and play for all the farmers just like him. The House on the Hill, 1959. The house was abandoned when my father walked up the hill to photograph the image of all that remained, walls, windows, roof, where he discovered remnants of a life, a two-roomed house, a family house for three, father, mother, son, festooned with roses that grew from the foundation at the south and poked their peachy blossoms up and through the window, like a local improvement committee come to help or beautify or gossip. Imagine the three of them lived here and made a home in this small space. A sacred space now, like a paradise, a path between the present and the past that we humans can imagine, where history reveals connections as a kind of peace between the intervals of life and death. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce. I noted, and Dzvinia, you may have noted that Ali has just appeared. So why don't we, before we move on, I think if it seems reasonable to hear, even by itself, unpaired with the English, to hear the poem in the Ukrainian, since she is here now, if she's willing to do that.
She reads beautifully. So if everybody is fine with that, I'd love for the original to be represented here.
Let's hear it for sure.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Welcome, Ali.
Thank you. I'm very sorry. I'm in the central time zone and I thought I was actually early. So I apologize. And I assume, Vivian, you have already read?
Yes.
Okay, so here goes nothing.
Oh, no, that's not.
У маленькому провінційному китайському містечку мільйонів так на 2-4, де ніхто із продавців не може зрозуміти, чого мені треба. Навіть за допомогою мови жестів. Відчуваю себе линвою, причепленою тільки з одного боку. Самотньою рівно настільки, наскільки мені завжди хотілося у світі собі подібних, без надмірного бажання пояснити себе, достукатися. Я не хочу розуміти всіх і бути зрозумілою. Мені достатньо бути собою і дивитися, як цей ранок набирає обертів, розкручуючись у повітрі, як місцеві м'ясники розрубують туші худоби прямо в проході між будинками, як продавець із магазину навпроти обсмалює свинячою ратицею, як місцеві домогосподині жваво обговорюють щось над грибами шиїтаке, розкладеними на рядині прямо на тротуарі. Напевно, мене обговорюють, раз по раз позиркуючи, як добре, що я не розумію. Часом людині треба нічого не розуміти, починати все від початку, від найзагальніших понять, з спільного кореня, із власного тіла. Я говорю тільки мовою дітей, які обступають мене на перехресті, несміливо торкаються, відбігають, показують, у якому напрямку мій готель, питають, як мені тут, хто я і звідки, розповідають, як їм тут живеться, як я їх розумію. Мова дітей скрізь однакова, весела, дзвінка, із відкритим від цікавості ротом, із допитливим вказаним пальцем. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I'm very glad we could have the Ukrainian in our ears. That's important. Thank you very much. We'll go on now to the E.E. Cummings Prize. The E.E. Cummings Prize is for a compelling, lyrical, or experimental poem, no more than 21 lines. This prize recognizes one of the Poetry Club's most famous charter members, and these poems were selected by M.P. Carver. So we'll begin with the two honorable mention poems. And first, Judith Hoyer, please.
Hi, I'm reading to you from my home in Wayland, Massachusetts. And the poem is a true story, I have to tell you. Alone on the road back to Seoul after Monica Yoon. In Pyeongtaek, I was rushed onto the wrong bus with locals gripping loaded grocery bags. After forever on a back road, I was swept into a depot. And like the blackbird in the rafters, I was desperate for a way out. As night fell down tier by tier, I plunged into a crowded square where white cabs lined up like bones of the departed. Seoul, I said, and was led to an anonymous black sedan. The driver read the card I handed over. Ah, the ambassador. As the car moved north where this trip began, I groped for my billfold, counted 1,000 won, like ransom for my release. Flickering soul crawled toward us in the dark, where my hotel waited on top of a hill. I gave the man whatever he wanted and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. I've also visited Seoul quite a number of years ago and was disconcerted to discover, as you know, and I'm sure many people here know, there are no street numbers. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Very provincial of me to worry about that, but still. For our next honorable mention poem, welcome back, Paula J. Lambert, with her poem.
This was written at the Cape Cod National Seashore, and it's called What I Watch the Sea Tell the Seashore. I watch the seals bobbing, 1 head, 2 heads, 3, 4, 5 heads. Then the rest of whatever seal is undulates up, 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 down again, down, disappearing into the sea, the vast and heaving sea. Each way
I think Paula, you're freezing up, unfortunately. Let's hang out and see what happens. I'll say that on email before the reading, she expressed a concern this might happen. You want to make sure someone has a chance to finish what they're doing. Yeah, she's frozen.
She might do better if she turns off the video.
Yeah, Paula, if you can hear us, you're frozen and we can't hear you. And yes, oops, where did she go? Has she turned off her video? Let me see if she's here or not. Hang on. We will, I don't think Paula's in. That sometimes happens, people get knocked out when they have bad connection. So we'll hold that thought, presuming she comes back in, and I hope she will, then we'll ask her to start again. But
She is back in. She is here.
Oh, she is here?
Yes,
Hold on.
wave and unmute yourself, Paula.
Thanks.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. We lost
Okay.
you after about, I think, maybe half of the poem. Do you want to try your luck and start again?
Or I'm at my mother's Wi-Fi-less house using my phone as a hotspot, so I apologize.
Why don't
Um,
you take your video off?
What I watch the sea tell the seashore. I watch the seals bobbing, 1 head, 2 heads, 3, 4, 5 heads. Then the rest of whatever seal is undulates up, 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 down again, down, disappearing into the sea, the vast and heaving sea. Each wave clamoring for shore and retreating, clamoring for shore, retreating. I want you, don't want you, go away, I'm leaving. Kiss me, oh kiss me, go away, says the sea. Leave me, oh please don't leave me. The cormorants bob and dive. The seals bob, undulate, dive. Little head, fat head, fat head, fat head, bobbing goodbye. I love you, I need you, goodbye. Good riddance, don't leave me, goodbye. Hello, don't leave me, I'll die. Goodbye, bye, bye. Hello, goodbye, goodbye. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye, bye.
Good. Thank you, Paula. Thank you. I'm glad you're back. We'll conclude this part of the E. Cummings Prize with this year's winner of the prize, Carla Schwartz.
Thank you so much. So hard to follow those two. But this poem is titled Pat Schroeder Was Our Mother. And I wrote it shortly after the death of Pat Schroeder. And I refer to a couple of things in here. One is I refer to a quote of hers, which says that I always wanted to be cremated and made into a doorstop so I could hold a door open, because basically what I want to do is hold doors open for people. Okay, so that's one of her quotes, and I refer to that in the poem. And the other thing I refer to is the fact that when she was on the House Armed Services Committee, initially she was required to share her seat, the actual chair, with another member so that they each had half an ass on the seat. Okay. And finally, another thing is her memoirs called 24 Years of Housework and the Place is Still a Mess. So I refer to all of those things in this poem. So I'd like to dedicate it to the memory of Pat Schroeder, who really was the mother of us all in terms of feminism and activism, and also to the memory of my father, who would have turned 95 today. And this is called Pat Schroeder Was Our Mother. I want to be ash. I want to be doorstop. If you don't stick to your word, I'll call you Teflon. I want to be ash. I want to be doorstop. I'd be your mother and yours and yours and yours. I want to be ash. I want to be doorstop. I'm no God, but crack sunlight through your clouds. For all those who follow my footsteps, I'll stick out my neck. Make me your doorstop. Give me half a seat and think that's half a voice. I can stand and shout, oh, you'll hear my voice. You give me shit, but I say it's my choice to eat and swallow what you give and spit it on your feet. I've been a working woman, so clean house as I see fit. When the house burns down, ashes, ashes, I'll be in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you. Next, we'll have the winner of this year's Samuel Washington Allen Prize. I'll introduce Carolyne Wright.
Well, hello there, and thank you so much, everybody. I'm so honored to have won this award. I actually received the honorable mention for a different long poem last year. And I want to thank a few people very quickly. The late Diana de Hovhanessian, who was the one who encouraged me to become a lifetime member of the New England Poetry Club back some 30 years ago when I did live in the Boston area in Cambridge and then in Arlington. So that's why I'm here all the way from Seattle, still participating after living on various continents and cities around the US. So I wanted to thank her, and I also wanted to thank the contest judge this year, Danielle Legros-Georges. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this poem, which is called Bahia, is set in Salvador, Bahia, which is the center of Afro-Brazilian culture in the state of Bahia, Brazil, up in the northern part. That big bulge of the South American continent, sort of down east from that, is the state of Bahia. It is the state with the highest percentage of Afro-Brazilian citizens in Brazil. And so Salvador, the city, is the main center of that culture. This poem, which is called Bahia, is sort of the opening of it, especially, is modeled on the opening of Elizabeth Bishop's lyric narrative, sort of long poem called Santarém. And Santarém is a city a small city on the conjunction of two rivers, of the Amazon and the Tapajós, in the middle of the Amazon rainforest area. And it was a city that she had visited in the late 1960s and had an amazing series of experiences there. But as you may know, Elizabeth Bishop lived for 15 years of her life in Brazil. So I have found her a stirring example for my love of that culture, Bahia especially. So the poem begins with a quotation, the first line of Elizabeth Bishop's poem, Santarém, which is, "Of course, I may be remembering it all wrong." Elizabeth Bishop, Santarém, Bahia. "Of course, I remember everything all wrong. You orixás who protected me after all these years. That season of Carnival, I wanted to stay on. More than anything, I longed to keep on extending those weeks of blessed madness, renting a modest room in the Pensão São João. How did I find such a place? What a mouthful of sounds I yearned to master in that name. I intoned them silently as I gazed up at the curly-cued baroque of the hand-tinted signboard, a shabby, genteel B&B. At what address? Mestre Pita asks me. Avenida 7 de Setembro, antiga Baixa dos Sapateiros? Ah, Baixa dos Sapateiros, street that gave its name to composer Ari Barroso's famous lament. Ah, Bahia, Bahia que não me sai do pensamento, não. Bahia that never leaves my thoughts. Somehow, I never kept that address. Was it it on one of those mean streets somewhere beyond the Pelourinho, a cobbled lane lined with tall, dingy edifices, too new for charm, too old for mint condition, cheap steel and vitrines of jaundiced, yawing rainbow, canyons of perpetual shadow, upside, colonial, sun-flooded Barroquinha, a lane lined with shingles of freight inspectors, oculists, and shops with fabric by the yard. I open the old map that separates along its folds and falls apart in hands still capable of grasping, of seeking a reason for this history. Amor que perdi na Bahia vou cantar. Who was that love? Never mind, I had followed here. Never mind, Mastri, you understand. You followed your own love to her distant country where you knew no one and spoke not one word of the language. In your distant country, I rose every morning with the January sun and drumming of street percussionists, bolted coffee and toast, and dashed out into Salvador's resplendent day, hoping to run into him in those random passings on the footpath, that elaborate pretense of coincidence I convinced myself I perfected. Flower patterned lenço on my head, white muslin blouse through which the sea breeze filtered, swirled skirt the color of undulations on All Saints Bay. In my own untutored way, I wanted to honor Yemonja, the only Orisha I knew of then, and I had nothing but myself that anyone could have wanted. I trace a finger along the streets splayed open on the old map, streets still as steeply canted as I recall them, where I swayed down colonial cobblestones, deeply fissured in places and spattered with sudden rain. I kept on catching myself mid-stumble like a novice dancer not yet practiced in a new routine. How I wanted to mimic moves of Bahian girls, those golden-skinned mozas and meninas, my own skin burning under sunscreen and impossibly pale. Could I have camouflaged in plain sight, surrounded by so much sun-inflected laughter? And I'm going to stop there. There's that's about 1/3 of the book, 2/5 of the poem, and you could catch the rest of it in the anthology. So thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, thank you. Obrigada.
Thank you, Carolyne. And yes, I'll mention that. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, when everything appears in the anthology, the Washington Allen poems, they will be complete. So we'll turn now to the Amy Lowell Prize. This is for an outstanding poem by a poet with strong ties to New England. And it recognizes, as you may already be aware, recognizes one of the New England Poetry Club's most famous charter founding members. The winners this year, or the poems this year, were selected by our co-presidents, Doug Holder and Denise Provo. Again, we'll begin with honorable mention poems. So first, David Gordon.
All right, thank you so much, David. And this poem is called Bill Evans and My Brother's Hands. And it's a rhyming poem. I didn't really set out to make a rhyming poem, but that's how it came out. It came out very quickly. And it came out in response to the death of my brother and the chance to see him one last time before going into the mortuary blaze. So but not a grim poem. So I hope you don't find it that way. I find it very hopeful, but it brought me back to many memories of him as a kid and me sitting there. He was a little bit older and me sitting in awe of his piano playing ability and his ability to make a life playing music all over the world. So Bill Evans and My Brother's Hands. Last time I saw our brother in the flesh, and not in dreams or visions where he lingers. I held his hand, the left one, and I traced the lines that marked the joints of each his fingers. I heard him play the piano theme to MASH, the one he learned by copying Bill Evans. His hands arpeggiated minor sixth, then kind of blue, E minor with a seventh. Suicide is painless, the theme claims. Debatable was Evans' wry reply as cocaine, smack, and gin swam in his brain with devastating strokes before he died. My brother's hands, though, have not turned to blue from substances, but from a swollen heart. The melancholy scales that played inside got faster, darker, as he fell apart. I spent so many hours watching those same hands in churches, bars, and on the stage. His limber fingers mastered strings and keys in songs read with his ears, not on a page. But now his ears and hands lie on a tray, with arms and legs, with torso, head, and heart, a steel bed for the mortuary's blaze, to dust again his instruments of art. His music, though, will play beyond the fire and haunt our lives, those secret chords of heaven. We'll hear the theme to MASH and hum along, so very blue, E minor with a seventh. Thank you.
Wonderful, David. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our second honorable mention poem is from Monica Raymond. Monica.
Whoops.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Beautiful. Okay, this poem is called Jerusalem. I wrote it obviously before the recent conflagration in Israel. It's a response to Psalm 48. It's true, Jerusalem. Its cracked mud, its foul and scent of bay, smoke rising from the charred plinths, such barbecue. They knew how to celebrate me, those stripling priests burnished with slaughter, leery at dawn, their prayer shawls speckled with blood, as if they'd been up all night studying, run a hard race. And it made sense then, maybe, for the psalmist to tell you to engrave on your heart the temples of Jerusalem, the alleys and cafes where four boys in kippot are drinking King Coke and singing along to Hey Jude, the only English they know. And deeper still in the bowels of the old city, a Palestinian woman offers hummus without a word, shoves it on the counter. The best.
Oh, Monica, unless that was the conclusion, your sound, I think, is frozen up, unless I'm wrong about that. It ended with the best.
I think it's her Wi-Fi, David.
Oh, now I think she's gone out. Oh no, no, she's coming back in. Connecting to audio.
How are we doing? My screen's crashed. The Borscht Belt crashed it. Should I go back to the beginning of that verse? What should we do?
You're still breaking up pretty badly.
Really?
Well, not at this very moment, but a moment. Yeah, give it a try from the beginning of that verse, please. Yeah, let's give it a try.
Okay. If not, maybe you can put the phone number in the chat. I can call in. Okay. Tissues for 100 allergies. Stop me if you can't understand. Stop me as soon as I start breaking up, okay? Tissues for 100 allergies. Tissue, I don't even know you. Borscht belt and baggage and Bereshit. Honey, are you kidding? Do you think that I still live in Jerusalem? Always I was the king of forbidding, but even for me now, there's too much forbidding in Jerusalem. Those guards at the Dome of the Rock, men in strimals descending like black raptors on the woman at the wall. No, I no longer live in Jerusalem. I'm stowed in steerage, stickers on my duffel, Marrakesh, London, Shanghai. I live, yes, where do I live? I'm like the wandering Jew. It's pale green and purple leaves in a Victorian parlor, filling one window and then the next, refusing to be trained, looking out at the landscape of stockyards and skyscrapers in a time I set rolling that keeps on rolling. I like New York, where the echoes of Marxist quarrels float above the dairy cafeterias, or Vilna, where Yids are once again inventing Yiddish, or Santa Cruz, where the witch girls take mikvahs in the salt ocean, under the prescient stars which pierce their fate, like a tattered garment in which to greet Elijah when he comes to sip invisibly on Pesach. Wherever I go, I'm like a pot on the fire. I know any minute can easily be tipped over, my contents spilled on the coals, soup a hiss. That cloud of steam that once shielded the Israelites, now that cloud of steam frays in strands, just that fragile. The Cossacks are coming, grab the baby in the purse. Don't you have a great aunt who lives in America? I am the talit past packed in mothballs so long, they themselves wore it away. A tapestry of holes, a tapestry of windows through which you see clearly the windows of the train that's taking us where exactly? Maybe it's not too late to travel like pollen, to smear into creation, submerge in the stuff I once made. Diaspora means disperse, become one with the fibers of air. How could I live in one place? Mama physics, Papa astronomy. I had to leave. I had to be faithless and rootless to come into my next turning. Slowly the sun takes me, the sun I once made. Indignant, then humbled, a mumbling schlepper, I walk to the edge of the city, my mind and heart already filling with holes, with windows. I put out my thumb on the road.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Yeah. Thank you very much. Oh, and so for the winner of the Amy Lowell Prize, we'll again, very happy to ask Paula J. Lambert to step forward. I'll hear from her again. Paula.
I'm gonna continue to leave my video off and we'll hope for the best. I'll jump right into the poem, which is called What Grows from a Heart Stopped Cold. The trumpet vines had taken over the trellis, wound their way through to the screen porch floor, walls, roof. I cut it all down. My daughters didn't talk to me for days. We had so many hummingbirds then, flitting and buzzing with the fat black bees, carpenters doing their own damage. I had my reckoning with them too. But the scarlet trumpets dangled like candy, half of the hummingbirds disappearing inside them entirely. Later, in less happy times, I saw a Walton Ford painting, limed blossoms, read about boys chewing wheat paste to lime the trumpets, read like these. So when the birds flung their tongues into the nectary, ruby red necks following, just like these, they were stuck and died. Their terrified hummingbird hearts, so overworked to begin with, exploding in fear. The little boys sold the birds for ladies' hats. Some did it just for fun. Either way, the casual cruelty of boys has stopped so many hearts cold. Yet women bind themselves to them, limed by some invisible force, scarlet finery, ruby wealth, red necks. It's a hard world. I've tried to tell the children, be careful of what woos you. Our screen porch now is surrounded by wildflowers, bee balm, rose campion, canary yellow lilies, rows of Sharon and butterfly weed on every corner, iris, slender, elegant, tall. The carpenter bees continue to buzz and thump. I let them. The hummingbirds have returned, less drunk and dizzy than before, maybe, less trusting, but hungry. And here, where a house still stands, awash with color of every kind, stronger for what was torn from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And now we'll turn to the Jean Pedrick Chapbook Prize for a chapbook of poems published in the last 2 years. This prize was selected by Daniel Barnum, and we welcome Jennifer Jean to read a selection of poems from her chapbook.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here, and especially thanks to Daniel Barnum, the judge for the contest, as well as to Doug Holder, Denise Provost, David Miller, and everyone else at the New England Poetry Club. So I'm going to read a few saturation poems from my chapbook, Those. Saturations are a kind of ekphrastic written about or during or after an encounter with or an immersion into an audio, usually a musical experience. If you don't recognize the songs these pieces refer to, that's totally fine. You can look them up later if you want. I just really hope you enjoy the poems and the book. The first poem is after my mom's favorite Silver Bullet Band album, Against the Wind. All horses and homeless folk go to the beach when fires rip through California canyons. They run through surf against the wind, away from the flame of the night. When the choke smoke dies, they canter home to campfire stones, tent poles, push carts, hoof brush wire, salt block racks, and spoons, the flats of certain spatulas. Not everything unnatural is gone. In the fortified Getty Museum, St. Martin dividing his cloak with a beggar, the piebald horse, and Van Gogh's irises are safe too. Sometimes I feel less than a work of art, like a horse awash in a wave, not ablaze, like I'm home free when the ash is thick on ground I've slept on for months. Sometimes I wait for miles of asters, blue dicks, and desert pin cushions for an after fire super bloom to feel useful, created, though I know that's as unwise as a California breeze after a decade of drought. So the next poem I'm going to read is after the entire discography of The Doors, the band The Doors. And it's also about a false family legend about my dad, who suffered post-traumatic stress disorder after his service in the Vietnam War. I think the only other thing you need to know is Cabo Verde refers to Cape Verde Islands, which is where my paternal ancestors are from. And this poem is called The Doors of Perception. My father leapt on stage at the Hollywood Bowl to grab drum and cymbal sticks from a star. He wanted to be a star, a door, white. Security thugs dragged him off John Densmore. He saw doors everywhere. He saw doors everywhere at the Whiskey, the Beanery, the Magic Mountain Fest, and in primary colors in Windward, Oakwood, or north of Rose. He wanted to forget war in Venice, to be a door in Venice and face the faux canals. Later, he flew to Paris to pay homage to the door who died with a head of Alexandrian hair. He carried huge pale poppies to the poet's corner in the Père Lachaise, to this stranger under a cream coffin door nailed shut. He said, break on through. He put a poppy in his pocket like a receipt and chased daylight till he landed in LA, saw a wave of white stars rippling on the Pacific on new moon nights, when the ever-present rust cloud was blown out to sea. He found a motel room door, particle door, and shut it on all that he owned for 50 years. He lived there, adding up primary colors, hour to hour in bliss consciousness, crossing his legs on the bed, letting electric snow hush the TV, hush, gunfire, and blood. He forgot his father's Cabo Verde and let himself be Italian there, a different kind of Venetian, because who he really was too close to Black. And the last poem I'm going to read is an ekphrastic based on the photo that's mentioned in the poem, as well as a saturation based on the band Queen, their song, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, that song. It's called Hermosa Beach. As the Pacific choked on plastic, from shore to shore, began the unseen start of Chris Jordan's ghastly photo of a gajillion water bottles outside the cycle of life, not dissolving, not giving back. To dissolve, to give back, they'd be made of agar, algae, or sugarcane. As the sea filled up, how did I know the joy of giving, joy when I'm hungry, when I'm fresh out of foster care? I mean, we shared our shoulder knob, butt cheek, distended tummy, burn lines on the Buccaneer Camp bus pulling out of Hermosa. My lunchless stomach grumbling under a weird strip of red. But Marlene was burnt worse, and she'd welt overnight, so I pointed to a surfer on the shore side of PCH, whose towel dropped below his ass, yelled, full moon flash, which made her giggle like mad, which made me cackle like crazy. We rolled off the chalkboard leather seat. Then the boys behind us caught the wave, then the big kids in the back, then the bus load of us, then the busload chanted, we will, with stomp, stomp claps. As the Pacific filled with a gajillion unwaning bodies, I knew joy between a certain second stomp and a certain cup palm clap. As the sea darkened to our right, I mean, you don't have a map, and one off-ramp leads your bus to that Jordan bottle photo, another to waters without waste, another and you're 9, forever poking at the pain. Another has you empty-bellied, laughing with a friend. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I am going to put the purchase link in the chat, and these links will also be available on in the anthology once that's completed. But there's the link for Jennifer's book. Now we'll move to the Sheila Margaret Motten Book Prize for a full-length book of poems published in the last 2 years. These were selected by the board of the New England Poetry Club. We'll begin with the honorable mention selection for this year, and I'll introduce Victoria Redel reading from her book Paradise.
Hi, so happy to. I'm off mute, right? Okay, great. I'm going to read from Paradise, and Paradise sort of deals with questions of displacement and migration and exile, both in mythic ways and biblical ways, as well as in personal family ways. And in addition, thinking about sort of the aging body. I'll start with some of those poems, with some early poems. The Border. There was a gate, and through the gate, another garden. Same grasses, clover, gentian, lily, and the dry winds also made those willows sway. Just that rusty gate, the dirt beneath scraped when it hinged open, then shut, and some claimed one side was paradise. Garden. In the first weeks, we already knew this was history, that you'd speak of our nakedness, the flat grasses we wove and slipped over each other. First, there were frills of green leaf, stalks, tips too. Later came wild onion, the sharp tang of shoot and bulb. Then peaches. Standing together in sunlight, a coarse praise and song, we hardly cared that you would get so much of it wrong, that one of you would always speak of an apple, or claim that one of us was so persuaded by the snake. Darlings, we imagined you, over and over, how you would break each other, wound this garden. Only then, still licking the dried peach juice sticky down our fingers, did we know shame. Dominion. The animals had no love for us. We did not lie tenderly with the lion, and we had no peaceable gathering with the alligator and the wasp. Not for a moment did the crow believe we had dominion. And if you heard that caw and had seen clouds massing from steady hooves, you would understand there never was a fall. We stood, we ran. The next poem I'm going to read is called Refugees. In the last days, when he could barely open his eyes, he'd look up from the hospital bed, lift his hand and say, "That's me." And we said, "Yes, Papa, you're right here." "No," he said, jabbing his finger toward the television, clusters of makeshift tents bent under gusting winds, a child held over the rail of a listing boat. Or he pointed at lines of young men, squatting men, men slouched against stone walls, sweatshirts tied around waists, a few smoking cigarettes. "No," he said, waving towards men browner and blacker than he. "You think that's not me?" he said. "You look again." And this is a poem called Getting Close, so just evening the sides of the father to the mother in this one, Getting Close. Because my mother loved pocketbooks, I'd come alive at the opening click or close of a metal clasp. And sometimes unexpectedly, a faux crocodile handle makes me weep. Breathy clearing of throat, a smooth arm, heels on pavement, she lingers, sound tattoos. I go to the thrift store to feel for bobby pins caught in the pocket seam of a camel hair coat. I hinge a satin handbag in the crease of my arm. I buy a little change purse with its curled and fitted snap. My mother bought this for me. This was my mother's. I buy, and then another day, I buy something else. In Paris, she had a dog, Bijou, and when they fled Paris, 1942, they left the dog. When my mother died on February 9th, 1983, she left me. 30 years later, I'm exactly her age. I tell my husband, I will probably die by the end of today. All day, he says, "Are you getting close, sweetheart?" And late in the afternoon, he asks if he should buy enough filet of sole for two. From a blue velvet clutch, I take out a mirror and behold my lips in the small rectangle. "Put on something nice," my mother whispers on the glass. "Let him splurge and take you out for dinner." I'll read two more. This next one is called Snake. After at most a year, maybe 2, showing off how it circled their necks, slid down and out the bottom of a t-shirt, how they fed mice on ice from an open palm, jaw unhinging to take it whole. My sons had no time for the snake when she'd go milky-eyed, slowing until her dry length coiled into days and days of such gray stillness, I'd knock the glass tank to make sure she was still alive. Then maybe I'd be making a bunk bed or folding baseball pants when the edging began, a restless roughing against bark chips, rubbing forward along every available friction until the split when she'd press out of herself and leave the long opaque shed. I loved it every time. I don't mean the emergence, though yes, there was that, how she'd fold and stretch glossy and clear-eyed. No, I loved the papery scaled ghost I'd lift up, not to commemorate her chance to begin again, but the cold indifference to whom she'd been. And this last poem is a poem called The Psychic, and it's based on a town in northern Florida called Casadega. If any of you ever have the opportunity to go there, I would definitely check it out. The Psychic. He said I must pay special attention in cars. He wasn't, he assured me, saying that I'd be in an accident, but for that 2 weeks, some particular caution was in order. And he said, all I really needed to do was throw the white light of Alma around any car I entered, and then I'd be fine. And when I asked about Alma, he said, oh, come on, you know Alma well. You two were together first in Egypt and then in Stonehenge. And I nodded, though I've never been in this life, at least, to Stonehenge. And then I said, well, shouldn't I always throw the white light of Alma around a car? And when he said, well, it wouldn't hurt, I said, what about around planes, houses? What if I throw the white light of Alma around anyone who might need protection from the reckless speed of driving or the reckless swerve and skid of the world? And the psychic opened his hands and shrugged up his shoulders. So despite your doubt or mine as to why I'd gone there to a psychic in, I kid you not, a town of psychics in the first place, right now, as you read this, let me throw the white light of Alma around you and everyone you pass close to today, beloved or stranger, the grocer, the bus driver, the boy on his longboard, the lady you stand silent beside in the elevator. And also I'm throwing it around anyone they care about anywhere in the spin of the world, because we can agree that these days, everywhere, particular caution is in order. And even if unverifiable, the light of my dear sister Alma couldn't hurt. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Victoria. I'm putting the URL in the chat, the order link. Thank you very much. And we'll conclude by introducing George Kalogeris, who has this year's winning Mountain Book Prize book, Winthropos. So George will be reading, treating us from that book. Please, George.
Thank you, David. Can you hear me okay? Thank you, New England Poetry Club, for your support and appreciation of poetry. I'm going to start with a poem about memory loss. It's called Baby Monitor. She's sound asleep, or her Alzheimer's is. I can hear each breath she takes through the monitor I keep on my desk, hooked up as it is to the one upstairs beside her bed. The kind of listening device that's used for keeping track of infants. The tremulous speaker could fit in the palm of your hand. A little green light pulses every time it picks up any trace of my mother's voice. Babble of baby talk and muffled whimpers. Those garbled bits expelled from her speech machine, its plastic speaker propped all night on its stand, calling out softly some rhythmical ruminant something, so automatic it might be dreaming out loud in my mother's oblivious voice. O Sibylline machine that makes the incomprehensible clear. And please help her, and please guide him, and stop it from spreading to the kidneys, please, dear Lord, and make that enough to meet their mortgage payments. I'm privy to a prayer that no one else can hear, at least tonight. Some primal psalm where all are nameless, but none of them forgotten. And please, and please, and please goes the little green pulsing light. The next one is a Spanish term, noche oscura. It's from Juan de la Cruz, and it's a reference to the dark night, usually the dark night of the soul. And it's called Talking to Myself About Poetry. Whatever you do not give up on it. Keep listening for someone walking behind you. However faint those footfalls, they're not unheard. Trust that your language, lost in the deep dark wood of your larynx, will find another poet's guidance to read you back to yourself and break the silence. Just saying, my heart was in my mouth, Merula, stings back the nightingale in your mother's voice. Whatever you do not give up on it. At the end of another day, with the page still blank, yet the low horizon ablaze like consummate art. Who doesn't believe their lines aren't worth a straw? Nobody. Dream on, nobody. At the end of the day, ocean still echoes in earshot of open shells. Rosy-fingered dawn is under your eyelids. So your words are dead to the world. Let them lie there, true to themselves, as far from the teeming, swarming, inconceivable hives of Mount Hymettus, the poem to come may seem. Just one, not too mellifluous hum, and there they are, the lyric honeybees. It may be tonight they glaze your sleeping lips with honey of Mount Hymettus. Dream on like disillusioned, sweetly intoning Antonio Machado. Music for a mule pulling a water wheel in a dusty circle. Dream on, you are a tired animal with blinders on, but nothing is clearer than water, rising and falling, an Andalusian song. Remember that poetry was there for you in your darkest hour, that noche oscura, when you were 24 and suddenly fatherless. It's when you started writing verse in earnest. Whatever you do not give up on it. Keep reading Seamus Heaney and Juan de la Cruz. It's a reference in that poem to Mount Hymettus. That's a mountain in Greece famous for the honeybees, that's supposedly the bees of poetry that coated Pindar and Plato's lips with honey. I'm going to read two more. This one's called Birds in Cemeteries. It must be the shade that draws them, or else the grass. And it seems they always alight away from their flocks, alone. It's so quiet here, can't help but hear their talons clink as they hop from headstone to headstone. Their sharp, inquisitive beaks cast quizzical glances. The lawn is mown. The gate is always open. The names engraved on the stones and the uplifting words below the names are lapidary as ever. But almost never even a chirp from the birds, let alone a wild shriek as they perch on a tomb. And then they fly away, looking as if they couldn't remember why it was they came. But we're doing what our souls are supposed to do on the day we die, if the birds could read the words. The name of my book is Winthropos, and it's the town Winthrop that my Greek immigrant father changed. He Greekified the town. And this is the first poem in the book, and I'll finish with it. And thanks again to all the poets and to New England Poetry Club. Winthropos. And if you get lost, Yordgaki, what will you do? I'll find some older people and tell them my name. Anything else? I'll tell them where I live. And where is that? 45 Locust Ave. And where is that? Winthrop. Then comes his vague, Winthrop, Yordgaki, or is it Winthropos? Only now that I'm older than he ever was, and even in late middle age, wherever I am in my life, I still don't have the foggiest clue. Do I hear the rhyme? Obvious, unavoidable. It tells me the answer to the Sphinx's riddle is anthropos, my father pulling my leg. Thank you.
George, thank you very much. And here's the link to Winthropos. And why don't we all feel free, unmute, clap audibly for everyone. It's terrific.
Yay. Wonderful.
Yay.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Wonderful work, everybody.
Thank you. It's been a great afternoon.